Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave, Season 9, Episode 33. I am Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com, your host today, and sitting in for David Todd, my co-host. Haven't had him on in a while, so it's probably a good time with a quarter of the season plus one game gone in the Steelers' regular season to have him on. I'm, of course, talking about Alex Kozora. Alex, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. I'm glad I got to come on the good episodes after a nice win, not the bad ones you guys have had to slog through.
Yeah, in fact, that one, oh, Lord, was there enough gloom and doom for you in that episode after the Ravens lost there? I tell you, I wonder how many people kicked out the chair after that one.
Yeah, it was depressing, to say the least.
Well, it was a little bit more positive this past Sunday at home at Heinz Field against the Atlanta Falcons. A big win for the Steelers. I like the chances of the Steelers of winning that game. I like the chances of the Steelers winning every game this year. It's just whether or not their defense can show up and whether or not their offense can put up enough points on the board. I thought going into this game that the Steelers offense would have the ability against a Falcons defense ravished by injury to put up points. I just was unsure, what was going to happen against those good wide receivers and a good quarterback in Matty Ryan there. But they, after a kind of a shaky start, if you will, defensively, they really settled down and went on to, of course, have an impressive win. Mike Tomlin talked about that win a little bit more in depth on Tuesday. We'll go over the injury report here in a little bit and a few things. Main talking points of what Mike Tomlin had to say, but what were your overall kind of 30,000 feet thoughts coming out of the game against the Falcons?
Just that they finally played a complete game on all three phases. They won the line of scrimmage. They controlled the tempo of the game. They were able to have an effective run game, which, as you said, if there was a time to be able to run the football, it was against an Atlanta team averaging 5 yards per carry coming into the game, and then without their top defensive lineman and Grady Jarrett. And that you just got contributions from everybody, from special teams, from offense, from defense, splash on all three sides of it. The offense making big plays, defense getting a strip sack, fumble, and 6 sacks on the day. Special teams with a block punt that set up a touchdown at a really critical moment. Tomlin called it the biggest play of the game. So just playing a complete game, not beating yourself, making the splash, and you get the victory.
What's the narrative about this team right now?
Oh, I don't know, Dave. I try not to follow the narrative because it changes so much. I just get the feeling that there's still, it's still a similar team than we thought coming into the year, that the offense was going to be the strength, the defense was the one you weren't sure what you were going to get each week, and special teams would generally be okay, but it just feels like an unpredictable team. Like you just don't know what version of the Pittsburgh Steelers you're going to get each week, and that's still a little unsettling for me.
Right. I mean, it's not like I don't think things magically changed. We'll get into some talk about what we saw defensively in this game out of Steelers as far as blitz numbers and all like that. Because, I mean, quite honestly, I don't know how concerned you were there at, kickoff.
I'm very concerned.
Yeah, the thing was, we saw the offense go down and score twice on their first two possessions. That's key. That's something that's been happening against the Steelers this year. They've been the ones that have gotten in the hole quickly. But when you flip it over to the other side, and I think David and I talked about this on the Monday show. Atlanta did have drives of 9, 8, 13 plays to open up the game. They just didn't score.
Right, and this is a Steelers defense that, I said this a couple weeks ago, I think, coming off the Tampa Bay game, that it's a defense that's going to allow points, it's going to allow some chunk yardage, it's going to make you pull your hair out at several moments during a game, but if they can play well enough in situational football, red zone, third down, they did, and they can create just enough splash, they did 6 sacks and the forced fumble at the end of the game, the scoop and score. That's good enough for this defense, and that's what they did. It's going to be a very classic bend but don't break, which one, that's just because the era we're in, 2018, is the highest scoring league through the first 5 weeks ever, but two, this talent level just isn't quite there. So, they played how they needed to play, bend but don't break.
I shouldn't say they didn't score. They just didn't match, the Steelers score for scores. They obviously got the touchdown on the second drive and then the field goal on the third drive. What did you think about the touchdown now that you've that first touchdown that they gave up, now that you've had a chance to look at it? It just looks like, an RPO that the Steelers run mostly to the other side, and Bostic gets faked out by the run, and the safety not only kind of a little late getting there, but bad angle coming up to make the tackle, and then Sanu standing in the end zone.
Yeah, it's like I said, you're going to give up those chunk plays. That's just not going to go away this year. They motion Sanu to trips. It's zone coverage. No one follows with him. He gets a free release. Like you said, the play action, the RPO action, gets Bostic to bite, which is a tough spot for him to be in. Davis takes a bad angle coming down from single high. Just kind of a bad play all around, but, it was a nice design by Atlanta. So, I'm not too mad about it.
What did you think about Joe Haden traveling with Julio Jones?
Obviously it worked. The last 2 times they've done it, against Hopkins last year against Houston and Julio Sunday, it's been really effective. Neither of those guys caught a pass in the first half, and most of their box score production came when the game was well in hand, in the fourth quarter. So, I think Tomlin made the key point, though, that a lot of people lose, is that if you want to travel one corner, that means you have to be comfortable with everybody else moving. It's not just one guy moving. It's the entire secondary, all the corners moving, and you have to have a level of comfort there. So that's why it doesn't happen probably as much as people would like it to. They're just trying to figure out who their starting right corner is, let alone can they travel and can they move these guys around and put them in different spots. So, obviously Hayden's done a great job in rising to the challenge. I know we'll talk about should he shadow A.J. Green Sunday. You had a good post that says that's not as likely as some people might think. But obviously it was effective.
Yeah, unless I guess we'll go ahead and kind of start there. I don't think it is. I know a lot of people, because of the way that went down with Joe Haden traveling with Julio Jones, a lot of people are wanting to see Haden travel with A.J. Green on Sunday in Cincinnati. You kind of read in between the lines of what Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Mike Tomlin was asked, obviously Mike Tomlin's not going to come out and give us the game plan, unfortunately, but he was asked in so many words about what kind of goes into the decision of deciding if a cornerback's going to travel with a particular wide receiver. And he says it's always about the trickle-down effect when you're talking about traveling with somebody. Not only the physical challenges in terms of the personnel matchups, but when they're moving people, who else are they moving, and what does that do? So that's an element of the equation. If we consider it this week, it will be an element of the equation, but it's a multi-layered decision, and it's not just about the person that you're working to neutralize. Now, Cameron Hayward went on the radio on DVE well before Mike Tomlin talked on Tuesday, and he was asked to give his thoughts about Joe Haden and him traveling with A.J. Green. Funny how the memory gets away from somebody, because as soon as he said this, my ears kind of perked up, thinking, I'm not sure I saw the same thing, and I quickly asked you about it on the Twitter machine, and you confirmed my suspicions. But Cameron Hayward seems to remember that the first meeting between the two teams last year in Pittsburgh, between the Bengals and Cincinnati, he had half of it right, that A.J. Green was held to like 3 catches in that game, which he was, but he seemed to remember Joe Haden following Green around all game, and that just was not the case, and your charting shows that Joe Haden stayed on the left side that entire game.
Yeah, they didn't shadow with Green last year, but I think that maybe changes year to year with obviously some new defensive back coach, maybe some new philosophy there and different pull, different progression of the corners. So it could happen. Haden did it in Cleveland and knows AJ Green really well, and that would be great incentive and reason to shadow. But it just depends, like you said, and like Tomlin said, on everybody else. How did you think Artie Burns and I guess Sensabaugh as well played? I thought they actually had a really nice game, maybe some of their best performances of the season.
Yeah, you talking about Atlanta?
Yeah, I guess Atlanta.
Yeah, most definitely. Look, I mean, I thought the secondary as a whole, outside of that Sean Davis bad angle on the Sanu, kind of rattled me a little bit. You just hate to see the guy come up. Look, I'm okay. I mean, if you're going to give up a 20-yard play, give up a 20-yard play. Just don't let the guy stand in the end zone.
Get him on the ground, like Tomlin said.
Right. Give yourself some grass to defend. I thought Edmonds. I thought that by far was his best game of his young NFL career, and that's not really. We're talking 5 games, so it's not not saying too terribly much. But I thought he made some especially some good tackles short of the sticks. I think he had at least 2 of those. I'm trying to remember if a couple of them were on third down. I think they were, and I think he had a pass breakup that he pretty much damn near intercepted.
Yeah, there was one play that sticks out in particular with Edmonds, a 3rd and 12, where the Steelers were running cover 1, and he covered the crossing route, and he made the tackle, and Steelers get off the field. So I think, the thing that was impressive about Edmonds was not only just that performance in a vacuum, which I thought was very good, but the bounce back coming off the Baltimore game, which I thought was his worst game of his young career, to do it Steelers-Ravens, your first taste of that matchup in primetime football, and to play pretty terribly, and to come back and have your best game against Atlanta, I think shows good mental toughness and a guy that has a short-term memory, which is so critical for a rookie in the secondary. And the other thing I think they did well with him against Atlanta was they kept him in the box. They kept him in that strong safety spot. Against Baltimore, they had Davis in the box like 11 or 12 times, which is unusual for the free safety. Edmonds was kind of playing a lot more center field, which is not his MO right now. Had him uncomfortable, so I think they kind of got back to basics with how they use Edmonds, and he played better because of it.
There's plenty of time to make him interchangeable.
Yeah, today is not that day, though.
Week 4 was not that time.
And the Mike Tomlin, who always says those spots are interchangeable, nope, not so much, Tomlin. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it.
I understand you want to at least strive to get to something like that. But I mean, for going even back as far as Troy and Ryan Clark, I mean, one was more predominant free safety than the other. There were the occasions where, Troy would beat a single high, but not a lot. Right?
Yeah, even Troy and Chris Hope, same story there.
Right, same story there. So don't force it, and it really kind of felt forced that, we were going to try to fool you. And the bad thing about it, too, is they were, to me at least, they were tipping their coverages off way too early against the Ravens. And when you flipped over to the other side of the football, the thing that I think the Ravens did so well and have really since Eric Weddle arrived is they're so good at disguising their coverages pre-snap.
Yep. No, it's a great point. That is such a good point because the Steelers do not rotate their safeties very much. You don't get a whole lot of guys trying to hold their spot in disguises. The Ravens do a fantastic job of that. Now, granted, the Ravens have a much better safety tandem in Weddle and Tony Jefferson, but if there was one – there's many things I'd like to see Keith Butler do better, but it's particularly one thing is maybe trying to disguise some of those coverages a little bit better. But when you have a secondary that's struggling, when you have a relatively young secondary, when you have Terrell Edmonds in there, I know there's probably some things that you want to simplify and limit yourself to not hurt yourself before the snap.
The thing, and in no way am I comparing Troy to Eric Weddle, but Troy was so good with his timing at being in spot A right before the football snapped, and then 22 yards off the ball, 2 seconds after the ball was snapped, and that we see Eric Weddle do similar things like that, and that has caused Ben Roethlisberger some problems. Since he's arrived, and it goes without saying that Troy and his ability to really rotate anywhere on the field was a key factor in what helped him get so many interceptions during his career. So, yeah, I mean, look, can Edmonds become that guy? Maybe. I mean, I think he's always going to predominantly be a more in-the-box safety than he is a free safety type, and that should be expected. But, yeah, I thought the game against the Ravens, it was way too early to be having him be more of a free safety role.
Yep, I agree.
All right, moving on to some of the let's stay on the Joe Haden versus A.J. Green thing. Would you, and do you think it will happen?
Would I? I mean, I know the easy answer is yes, but again, like Tomlin says, there's so much else to consider. They've done a good job of having a game plan against A.J. Green without shadowing. Like you said, they did it last year in the first matchup, and they didn't shadow. So I don't think you have to. I'm not going to be super upset that if they don't, because one, I'm expecting it, and two, again, they've proven that they can slow him down without it, and then the Bengals are showing some other competent weapons this year, especially in Tyler Boyd. I don't think it'll happen, and I'm okay with it not happening. I know that's going to be unpopular, but that's what I'm here for.
And I'm going to be on the we're going to hold hands and be on the unpopular side of the fence.
Misery loves company, right?
Because and I think Mike Tomlin phrased it perfectly. It's just they move him around so much, talking about A.J. Green and the appearance that he's being moved around even more this year makes it hard to have a guy like Haden travel so much, especially down into the slot. So I think
Julio was in the slot though. Hayden played a little bit of slot Sunday.
Right. But I just.
But you're right. I hear you.
To do that for an entire game, I think would really stress you. But we'll see. And Mike Tomlin was correct to point out that Tyler Boyd has made a huge stride in that Bengals offense this year. And in fact, I think I pulled the numbers last night. He has 11 receptions in the first 5 games on third or fourth downs. Wow. I think 2 of those are on fourth downs, and 10 of those 11 move the chains. So, wow. Whereas A.J. Green, I believe, has 6 in total receptions. Now, all 6 moved the chains, and in fact, 2 of those were touchdowns for A.J. But it really appears as though Boyd has been Dalton's go-to guy on third or fourth down situations there. So,
and they needed it. They needed another weapon because John Ross hasn't been the guy. So that's the difference in the Bengals offense last year compared to this year.
And it makes Ross even a little bit better. Gives him a little bit better matchup. Because of now. People are going to have to start paying a little bit more attention to Boyd. On top of that, of course, they lost Tyler Eifert, a couple of games ago to the injury, and that was a big loss I felt for their offense on top of it. But they certainly seem to overcome. Look, make no mistake, we're a little bit out of sync here with what we're trying to attack this podcast, but the Bengals are a lot better team than I thought they would be this year.
Yeah, I think the whole AFC North is better than I thought it'd be. There's no, not that there really are ever gimmies, but there really aren't definitely any gimmies this year because it's a really competitive group, top to bottom.
All right, let's take a quick break for our sponsor ad right here, and we'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about some of the other things Mike Tomlin had to say. All right, Mike Tomlin went over the injury report on Tuesday, the way he ran down the list of the health of the team like he normally does on a Tuesday. First and foremost, he talked about L.J. Fort with an ankle, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one.
Edmonds with a calf.
Those 2 guys are going to be watched this week. Now, Edmonds played every snap against the Falcons, and L.J. Fort, even though I think he suffered that ankle injury, first quarter or something, I think when he left and had to have it taped up, he came back in and played 20-something snaps as a sub-package linebacker there. So Mike Tomlin said both those guys will be watched this week. The 3 players that missed the game with injuries, talking about Vince Williams with a hamstring, talking about Darius Hayward-Bay with an ankle, and talking about Morgan Burnett with a groin. Mike Tomlin said all 3 ran a straight line So last week. So read into that what you will. I still kind of wonder if, at least when we're talking about hamstring with Vince Williams and ankle with DHB, if it might not be the wise thing to do to hold those guys out another week and get them through the bye week. Morgan Burnett with the groin, he's tried to go limited. I would expect him maybe to try to go limited today. It seems like that's been kind of the MO with him. The problem is he's not been able to close out the week with a practice. So I'm not even going to try to speculate about Morgan Burnett's groin. We'll see what happens with Vince Williams. Cameron Hayward was on the radio yesterday, as I said, and he seems to think that Vince will be back this week. To me, it's not that big of a deal if Vince isn't back this week. It would be, I think, if you don't have a guy like L.J. Fort in there. And Edmonds, of course, you would want him on the field if possible, but you know how Mike Tomlin treats these young players. If they don't practice fully all 3 days, there's probably not a good chance that they're going to play. Speaking about the inside linebacker position there, how did you feel the combo of Matakevich and L.J. Fort played?
But they played really well. Dave, do you know who was the signal caller who had the green dot Sunday? Because I don't know.
I think they talked about having to swap it
between Fort and Matakevich.
I thought that's what I read. I thought Fort said something along the lines that it was kind of awkward swapping a helmet.
Well, whatever it was, it worked because the communication was good and both played well. Even Matakevich, who was just in base and Fort and sub, I thought Matakevich did a nice job sideline to sideline and some of the stretch runs that Atlanta ran. And then Fort was obviously an impact player with, I think he had 3 pressures, a sack, the touchdown, the fumble recovery. So yeah, I know they played well, and I'm glad that they didn't really. As much as I want to see Matthew Thomas play, and we're all excited to see it whenever it happens, I'm glad that he really just kind of kept it with just 2 guys, Matakevich and Fort, to simplify things a little bit and not get too crazy and add another guy, another element into the mix. So, I thought they helped simplify things and had a fairly good approach. Again, Matakevich in base for the most part, Fort in nickel and dime. But, I thought they both played well.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure about the green dot. It was one of those things that I meant to go back and look at on the TV angle because obviously we can't see that on the coach's tape on the All-22 when it comes to that. So I'll put that in my notes to double check on that. I will say this, and I'm going to probably write about this later on today about Cameron Hayward and what he said about the communication with Vince out. He said that it forced all of them to use hand signals more and to communicate more individually, and I felt that was a big takeaway from that. Instead of kind of letting, I guess, Vince be the prime communicator, it was up to most of them to try to communicate among themselves, and I thought that was a big takeaway. And Cameron Hayward said in so many words that even if Vince does come back this week, that's something that they need to try to do more of. And look, we don't know how good or how bad the communication was down there. So, I think people are saying, well, Tomlin was calling the defense more this week, or they had flashcards on the side. I think that's a lot of malarkey.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you.
No, I agree. I think that's all baseless.
Yeah, to me, I don't know how you can tell Mike Tomlin was making all the calls in this game and how it was any different signaling in stuff this week as opposed. We just don't see that angle of it. And I think unless somebody says anything, it's just baseless statements that seem.
Tom, you would see Tomlin with the play call sheet.
Yeah,
and Butler has that.
Right. He's not going to just rattle off the top. Now, Mike Tomlin might, in a certain situation, hey Keith,
sure.
Do this or do that, but not on a play by play basis. Okay, we got the injuries out of the way. What else did Mike Tomlin say?
Where do you want to go with this?
Let's talk about. He was asked about how much have you blitzed last week, and have you done more this year, and we made it a note to talk about this because you got the charting already done. I think you have kind of the numbers on the season. Here, Mike Tomlin says probably no more than normal, to be quite honest with you. It was effective, but probably from a ratio standpoint, no more than normal.
Tomlin's he's right and he's kind of wrong in a way. He's right in the sense that statistically it's just about the same percentage as the rest of the year. Coming into this game, they've blitzed about 42.5% of the time. Against Atlanta, they blitzed, I think, 22 of 51 attempts, so that was like 43.5%. So that's about the same number. But the reason why I say he's kind of wrong, he's not wrong, but they're blitzing more than Keith Butler ever has before. I mean, Butler blitzed a career low last year. I forget the number. It was, I think, a third maybe, and now that number spiked up to 43% of the time. So they're blitzing a lot more than they ever have under Keith Butler, and they blitzed about the same against Atlanta.
Now we've had this talk before in the past. When it comes to us and charting and talking about what they consider. Are you considering that more than 4, or are you considering that an unknown player? In other words, a four-man coming, but if Mike Hilton comes off the corner, are you also counting that?
Yeah, I'm counting anything that's not a down lineman or an outside linebacker as a blitz. So if it's a 4-man pressure, but Hilton's coming, that's a blitz. Now I can pull up the number for the other one for 5+ if you want me to and see what those numbers tell us. But the numbers I just gave you, the 43, 44%, is about just my definition of blitz.
All right. Now what about 4? How many? I guess my question, and this is what kind of stuck out to me when I was talking to David the other day, is that it just seemed like even though they were blitzing, that it was more 4-man. And that it seemed like they were doing a better job in all 4-man pressures, whether it just be, your 2 down linemen and 2 outside, or what, a non-blitz versus a blitz. Anytime it was 4-man, it seemed like it was doing a better job of getting pressure. I guess my question is how many 5 or more man pressures were sent against the Falcons?
All rushes, or do they have to be blitzes? How do you want to define that? Or both. I guess I could do both.
Yeah.
For 5, just anytime they sent 5 or more, it was 18 times. So that's like
that's more than what I would have thought off the top of my head.
And in terms of 5-man plus with a blitz component, 13 times against Atlanta. So that's maybe a quarter of the time.
All right. So how many of those were 4-man blitzes?
4-man blitzes.
Or four or less,
Yeah. Looking like, let me pull up the numbers, 9 times with a 4-man rush that had a blitz component. That was either Hilton coming from his nickel spot or they ran some other classic inside linebacker blitzes late in that game.
And 9 times in total is how many times Hilton came, right?
Yes. Believe it correct, yep.
Because I remember counting that one up myself.
Yeah, he had 2 pressures, and that was great to get him back because I know we've talked about it before, but his ability to kind of time those blitzes, I mean, it's really uncanny, and that's an innate trait that he has, and he does it so well.
I don't know if we track this specifically, but what did you think about the covered shells?
I think Butler, has said, he's wanted to simplify things, and that's kind of gotten back to a very Dick LeBeau cover 3, single high shell, where they're playing a lot more cover 3 than they have, the first couple weeks of the season, and more than really since early, maybe 2015 and Butler's first year as DC. It's been a lot of cover 3 on first and second down, and then more 2-man on third and long. That's kind of been, not always, obviously, but the general approach these last couple weeks.
And we saw a good instance, I think you put on Twitter last night, of Joe Haden doing a good job of sinking and squeezing in those situations. And if you and we've seen, especially on Artie's side in the past, we're going to see that route soon. Kind of that post corner to his side, that kind of stresses Artie's side where he just doesn't sink enough. You know what I'm talking about. The Patriots ran it, and
Mm-hmm.
Who else have run it? The Colts, I think, ran it, and the Chiefs have run it against the Steelers, where he just doesn't sink enough. But we saw at least Joe Haden do that properly on his side against the Falcons.
Yeah, that was out of cover too. I mean, Butler still run everything. They ran quarters on 3rd and 19 against Atlanta, so you still get everything. Obviously, you get cover one, but yeah, if you're playing cover two, one of the biggest ways to defeat cover two is something you talk about a lot. That whole shot. One of the most common concepts to beat cover two is the smash concept, where you're running a corner route with the number 2 slot receiver and a curl route with the number 1 outside receiver, and that puts the cornerback in conflict. If he doesn't get depth and sync on the corner route and he takes the curl because he's got flat responsibility and there's a receiver there, that's going to open up number 2 to the sideline, and the safety has to try to squeeze that in time. And then if he sinks, then you get the underneath throw. That's what you want to force, but then you got to make the tackle in space. So yeah, there was one instance where they were playing cover 2 and they were running, I think, 4 verts, so he sunk on number 1 vertical, and then the throw came to the flat, and he came down and made the tackle for no extra gain. So yeah, Hayden's been excellent. His ball skills are solid. I consider Haden and Hilton really the only 2 guys in the secondary as of now with really legitimate ball skills. Everyone else is either not there or just hasn't shown enough yet. But yeah, he's been fantastic.
This next these next 3 games obviously are big games for the Steelers. You have the Bengals, and then you get the bye, and then you get the Browns and the Ravens. We're going to learn a lot, I think, about this defense in the next 3 weeks, right? I mean, make no mistake about it. I mean, this team has to at least go 2-1 in these next 3 games, and I would say if you're going to pick a game to lose, it would probably be to the Browns, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to choose which game you'd like to lose to an AFC North opponent. I mean, you could argue it's better to lose to Cincinnati because you play them again and you're not going to lose the tiebreaker in any scenario like that. But obviously, if you lose to Cincinnati, they go to 5-1. You're below 500 again, and now you're really going to climb the rest of the way. But I'm with you. I think you have to go at least 2-1. Obviously, 3-0 would be the ultimate goal. But if you don't go, I said this on Twitter, if you don't go 2-1 over these next 3 games, then you're really back feeling the way you were before the Atlanta game, where you're holding your breath and saying if you lose here, you're in a really, really difficult spot. And then this time you'll be further into the season. So, yeah, these next 3 weeks in my mind, Dave, will define the Steelers season. It might not end the Steelers season. It might not guarantee anything in the Steelers season, but it will define it and tell you how the second half of the season is going to shape up.
I didn't even feel like, people 4 games in keep wanting to say must-win game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the game against the Falcons is one that you certainly wanted to win, but I still did not consider that a must-win game. Now, had they lost that game to the Falcons, then you're, these next 3 were probably close to as must-win as you need. But I think now that you have that 1 win in hand, look, make no mistake about it. If they go 1-2 or 0-3 in these next 3 games, the panic button should be pushed at that point because, I mean, you're really putting yourself in a tough spot division-wise where you need help, and then you're putting yourself in a situation where you need to win 10 games and hope for the best when it comes to maybe to a potential wild card. So, in other words, you really shift a lot of what you do into someone else's hands if you don't come out of this at least 2-1. So like you said, ideally 3-0, and you definitely would like to go into a bye. I mean, it would be how big? It would be a huge win, and who would have known we would have been saying this ahead of the season? If you go into Cincinnati and beat a team that you've had that you've gotten used to beating quite a bit since 2015 or whatnot, wherever. If you go in there on Sunday and beat them in their own house, it would be a huge win.
Yeah, that would be critical. Yeah, you can't understate, or what was it, understate or overstate. You can't stress how important that would be to get that W. But like I said, you have to at least go 2-1. I mean, that's the minimum here. Obviously, you'd love to go 3-0. You want to beat the Bengals because the Bengals, you don't want them to go 5-1, and the Steelers to be 2-3-1. I think that's what they would be. That's kind of the focus right now, because it is so weird that you're playing 3 straight AFC North games smack dab in the middle of the year. You don't play another one until week 17. You're getting 5 of these 6 games taken care of before the first half of the season ends.
Right, and that's the unique thing about the schedule this year. Like you said, 5 coming right out of the bye week. First half of the season, you basically have exhausted all your attempts at opponents in your own division there. All right, but one final note on the defense here. What don't you still what troubles you the most about this defense right now?
Well, you're still looking to figure out that right corner spot. They keep rotating, and I don't know when that's going to end. Tomlin was pretty non-committal about it when asked about it Tuesday. It just goes back to the idea that they're going to give up chunk yards. They're going to give up points. They're going to frustrate you. The pass rush is going to come and go. And like I said, they're always going to be relying on the situational football in creating, maybe 2 turnovers a game, 1 to 2 turnovers a game. And if you don't get that, you're going to be along for the ride. You're going to be playing a lot of shootouts, and those are always a coin flip. So it's just that unpredictable nature of what version you're going to get, and can they make those couple splash opportune plays without really any defined playmakers. They don't have that Shazier type anymore, who's that clear playmaker week in, week out. You can guarantee it. That's my concern, is it going to be one of those things where you just never know what you're going to get?
Well, you go back and I don't know if you've, I assume you have, you watched the Bengals game against the Dolphins. You want to talk about kind of maybe a Denny Green speech after that one. We let him off the hook. The 2 defensive touchdowns. You look at around the league on a week-to-week basis as some of how these turnovers happen and how some of these defensive touchdowns happen, and you go, why can't the Steelers just get something happen? And, like the Michael Johnson pick 6, if you will. I mean, how crazy of a play was that?
Right.
And then you see the fumble recovery by who was it? Sam Hubbard,
Yep.
For a touchdown. I mean, boom, just like that, they have 2 defensive touchdowns that really turned the tide of the game. And after a day where their offense really didn't. In my opinion, their offense didn't look great at times. Talking about the Bengals there. So yeah, I mean, you would like to see a defense create more splash. I mean, there's just no 2 ways around it. We just haven't seen that over the years.
Yeah, I mean, you've had it in pockets, and again, with Shazier, you had that guy you could take to the bank every week who was going to have a tackle for loss or a big pass breakup on 3rd down, or, he had that one string where he put 4 straight games with an interception, something absurd like that, and obviously you're just not going to be able to replace that with anybody, really, and so while you've had some playmaking, and that's good, and again, that's the blueprint for the Steelers' success on defense, is making some splash plays, getting some short fields for the offense, and just getting off the field because you forced a fumble or had an interception or whatever the case is. But who's that going to come from? What guy could you kind of rely on to get you that? And right now, this defense does not have that guy.
How many 3rd and 7 or mores would you guess the Steelers defense has given up so far this season? Allowed to convert? In
a percentage or a number?
I don't have the percentage. I'm playing with the total number here. With 3rd and 7 or more, how many have they given up? Would you think this year?
I don't even know. 15, 20, 15.
I don't know why this isn't sorting right for me here. Hold on.
I don't even know exactly how many attempts they've had, so I can't even get a good frame of reference.
This is showing me that it's for 3rd and 7. I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Does 11 sound about right?
That sounds about right, yeah.
All right, that's how many 3rd and 7 or longers I think they've given up so far this season. I wonder where they are league-wide on that. And of those, 6 were 3rd and 10 or longers.
Yeah, that's not good. There was like a 3rd and 14 against who was that against? Tampa? Yeah, they had that screen on like 3rd and 14.
And they
3rd
gave
18.
up the 3rd and 18 to Chris Godwin for 19 yards. That's the one I think Edmonds did. Edmonds miss a tackle or actually
Sensabaugh got truck sticked on that play.
Yeah, Godwin converted 2 in that game, the 14-yard and the 18-yard in that one. They gave up obviously the 3rd and 13 scramble by Tyrod Taylor up the middle. They also gave up a 24-yard scramble to Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco to Tim White just a few weeks ago. How frustrating was that? That was four slants. And you can't stop that on a guy named Tim White. Did you even know who Tim White was ahead of that game?
No, to be honest, nope. Did not know.
And Nat, you can probably thank Nat Burry for that one. Austin Hooper in this game this past week went for 10 yards on a 3rd and 10 in the second quarter, and Willie Snead converted a 3rd and 9 in the second quarter against the Ravens. That's too many, Alex. It's way too many. I mean, you get a team in 3rd and 7. You got to get off.
Yeah, and that's kind of a symptom of the pass rush being hit or miss. I don't know how much time you want to spend on it, Dave. I know we didn't plan it because we never plan these things. But what do you see with Hayward into it? Obviously, you had Hayward have the sack Sunday, which was a great play by him. He just walked Alex Mack and Matt Ryan. But any reason for why you think their production is where it's at? It's low.
They need to get those guys twisting more.
I think you do it less.
I think
I'm on the other side.
I think not just for their own stat purposes, but to get guys like Bud. I mean, look, Bud's success normally comes off of some sort of stunt.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, right?
Yep.
I mean, you almost need them free running. I mean, it's sad. I mean, it's the truth. And I think the flip side, obviously Bud's not as good of a crasher and you hate to say, I understand where you're coming from. You don't want to use up Hayward just being a crasher most of the time.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I understand why you do it, but I think that's why their production is down, because they are stunting and twisting so much. Their responsibility isn't to get after the quarterback as often.
Maybe they just need to line them up and let them go.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not going to get out of Bud if you do that.
Right.
We're talking about obvious passing downs, I'm assuming, right?
I mean, in general, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously a good place to start with it.
And say what you will, and I know he's AFC Player of the Week again this week, but I mean, I don't want to take any. I mean, the sacks are there, and look, the Steelers have what's the number on the Steelers? Sacks, second or tops in either?
They're first. They have 19.
All right.
They're on a better pace this year than they were this time last year, where they led the league.
And that's quite unbelievable. But we just talked about how they're having to get that, though, right? I mean, numbers generally.
Yeah, blitzing career high for Keith Butler.
All right. I mean, I still want to see a little bit more out of T.J. Watt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird with him. Those sacks come in bunches. He played well Sunday. I don't want to take away any credit from him, but the Falcons did run a lot of play action, which certainly helped. And that right tackle, Ryan Trader, got beat up. I don't know if he's hurt or just not that good or what. He was having fits from everybody. And
mostly around, with Watt, mostly around the edge.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There were no really oh my God wins for Watt this past week.
Yeah, I thought the last sack was his best rep that ended in a sack. I thought the other two were more off of play action. And I'm not taking away anything from him. Sacks. I'm happy that he got them. They're high impact plays. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't Von Miller.
Obviously the Hayward trucking of Mack was impressive. I mean, they need to get to it going somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't figure out anything. I think it's partially because the blitz rate is so high, and it's letting those guys are now contained guys, and they're playing a gap. They're not having as many two-way goes, not as much freedom. I think maybe there's been an emphasis on quarterback containment. That's been an issue for this team for several years now. It was an issue obviously week 1 against the Browns where Tyrod Taylor was able to leave the pocket too often, and I just feel like they're being asked to keep the quarterback within the pocket rather than winning their matchup. Not that you ask him to do both, but I feel like the emphasis is on just keeping the quarterback within the pocket, not letting him break contain, because that's hurt this team so much.
How much better would this defense be if you had a James Harrison quality of a pass rusher on that right side in place of Bud Dupree?
Yeah, it'd be huge. You wouldn't have to stunt. You could let those guys just rush. You're not doubling anybody. Dave, let me ask you this. I know we're 5 weeks in. I'm not asking you to give any concrete statement, but do you think Carl Dunbar has been a net good for this team so far or a net negative for this team so far?
Or
is it too early to say? I'll give you a cop out there.
Yeah, look, here's my thing about the defense, and I've said this from week 1. We saw, people tend to forget, a couple years ago when Artie and Sean Davis were both rookies. The first half of that season was miserable. They got better as the year wore on. Now, you really shouldn't have that issue per se this year, because technically, who's the young inexperienced guy in that deal? It's Edmonds, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, you probably have had to play him more than what you thought you were going to have to play him this year. But Haden's experience already burned. We went all through the pedigree of this defense, David and I, a couple weeks ago. So yeah, technically you should not. I could understand the Edmonds issues early, and in no way, shape, or form, and I know several draft experts are still harping on the selection of Edmonds and all like that, but it's way too early to throw this kid out of the throw the bathwater out with him. If you weren't expecting him to have issues having to play the amount of snaps that he's having to play in this defense right now, shame on you. So throw him out. But the rest of this defense, there is some pedigree in this defense, and thus the communication issues and one player trying to do too much. The same garbage that we've heard for 3 years, right? Yep. That's the most concerning thing. So, to try, am I overly impressed with Dunbar? No. I guess that's the straight answer. Is that what you're aiming for to come out of my mouth?
Well, yeah. I'm going to cop myself out here and say I don't really know how I feel. I think that McCullers has played a lot better under Carl Dunbar. I think you can give Dunbar a ton of credit for the sudden progression of McCullers' game. But
how many snaps is he playing, and how many should he be playing?
No, I know.
Which is low. The answer to both those questions is not many.
Yeah, exactly. Now that's what I was going to say, is that while McCullers I think has taken a step forward, we've seen Hayward and Tuitt not quite, they've taken a step back objectively. Now, do you want to put all that on Dunbar? Probably not. Do you put some of that on Dunbar? Perhaps. It's hard to say. And that's kind of what I was saying, is you've seen some guys, some of the backups take steps forward, some of the starters take a step back. Obviously, anytime the starters take a step back, that's generally a net loss. But I just wanted to get your take on how, if you could put any of their struggles on new defensive line coach and Carl Dunbar, who is a different style of coaching than John Mitchell.
Here's the thing. In today's NFL, if you're going to win it all, you have to have good quarterback play. You have to have consistent enough defensive play throughout the year. And during the playoffs, you have to have your defense win at least one game for you, maybe even two. Okay? It's that simple. You don't have to have a top 5 defense to win it all. to win a Super Bowl every year. But you probably do want to have a top 12 defense. A defense that's putting your offense in position a couple of times a game, some shorter fields and all like that. And here's the biggest thing, and it's why every year I want the Steelers to draft 7 edge rushers. You have to get pressure on the opposing quarterback with 4 or fewer players on a consistent basis. And your numbers right now, even though it kind of felt to me that they did a better job with 4 this past week, it was kind of smoke and mirrors. It was with some blitz, it was with some guys coming in there. You have to find a way to line up your front 4, get after the opposing quarterback with those front 4, and then you can work more off of that, in my opinion. And that's just something that they're not doing until they can line up both their outside linebackers and or their base front 5, have 4 of those guys go, 1 of those guys drop, and get pressure consistently. Then we're going to be disappointed about this defense, I think.
Yeah, that's been the story before. Tomlin and Butler have said they want to be able to rush with 4, win with 4, basically blitz when they want to, not when they feel they have to. One caveat I should put on those blitz numbers is that at the end of the game, Butler was just dialing up blitz after blitz. 7 of the last 9 pass attempts for Atlanta, Butler brought a blitz. Some of those were with 4, some of them with 5 and 6. So the number got a little inflated because of the end of game scenario. But yeah, still, we know the bottom line that this 4-man rush has to play the way it did Sunday for this defense to be successful.
So maybe that's where I got.
I think you're right. Yep.
Where your numbers are clouding my perception.
Yeah, I think your perception is right. I think there's a little bit of context, like always, that have to be added to the numbers. But I think you're right about your perception.
All right. Going to be interesting to see how they handle this because look, quite honestly, this Bengals with who's the OC over there? Laser still? Is he the OC?
Bill Laser, is that his name?
With the Bengals. Well, regardless, we have seen him. Well, you go back, and not that it's saying much against that Falcons defense. Boy, he just shredded at points during that game. He just some wide. I know there was some blown coverages in that by the Falcons as well too. And why the hell they were playing 2-man in certain situations in that game, I do not know. But this is a Bengals offense that can move the football on you. It'll be interesting to see how the Steelers defense matches up against that. All right, before we talk about and start closing out, talking about the Steelers offense here, Alex, I know you're not a big. I know you protect your money quite earnestly, and kudos to you. But if you like gambling on some football games or sports in general, let me tell you about my bookie. Sure, watching football is fun, but it's more entertaining when you have some action on the games. Guys and gals, you've heard us talking about this for the last several weeks, and some of you are still on the sidelines. Whether you're an expert or a rookie, maybe like Alex. Alex is not a football rookie. In fact, he'd probably do quite well. You should be betting at mybookie.ag. If you're the kind of guy or gal that likes to bet a little and win a lot, like playing the numbers on the roulette table, you can create a big parlay. The pick 3 in those parlays, which I hit one this past week. Pick 3 teams to win, and if you hit all 3, you can turn $100 into $600 that easily. There's so much to bet on. Playoff baseball is now going. Hockey just got going on. Last week we just had another MMA fight. Did you watch that, by the way? Did you get to watch any of the card on that?
On an illegal stream on Twitch and some
easy now. This is I run a respectable operation here.
That was crazy, though.
That was crazy, and they get my money every time. Primetime fights, you can bet on those and more. But mybookie.ag is the one bet I know you'll be happy with all year. We recommend these guys because we really trust them. Mybookie.ag has been in business for years. They've got great online reviews. They have a great mobile site. Not that I have to use it. It's easy to use as well, too. If you're on the sidelines, now is the time to get in the game. MyBookie.ag will still match your first deposit dollar for dollar, but you got to join now because they'll be pulling this offer pretty soon. Log into MyBookie.ag right now and double your money. Use the promo code TERRIBLE, as in the Terrible Podcast. If you do the first deposit that you make from $100 up to $1,000, they'll match 100%. That's promo code TERRIBLE. You play. You win, you get paid. All right, back to the offensive side of football. People, sometimes I'll get an email say, how do I like watching, or how I go about studying the tape? And I really had a problem with this, especially when the all, and maybe it's a good time for you to kind of chime in on this as well too. I really had a problem at first when the all 22 came out, because this might sound surprising to you, Alex. I get easily distracted.
What?
Yeah, I do. Little birds in planes or whatnot. Quick, shiny objects will quickly get me off focus on something. Now I've learned to get myself through TV games quite easily, especially with the condensed version and all like that. But when it comes to the all 22, I have found that the easiest way is to queue up all, say, Steeler running plays. Because they've got the search features there that way. I'll queue up all, because the things I'm concentrating, I try to make myself concentrate on is the line blocking, the play scheme, obviously, the blocking scheme, and then how the running back does. So what I'll do is I'll line up all the Steelers running plays first and go through that, and then I'll flip over to the other side and I'll watch the defensive side of football from all the opponents' running plays, and then I'll go back and I'll queue up all the pass plays, all the drop backs from there on both sides of the ball. I find that makes it easier for me to concentrate on certain aspects of the tape. And then obviously before any of that, I'll have in my notes, and it's generally goes around big plays. I'll usually key up all the big plays, explosive plays of the game, and watch those in order before I tackle, running plays and pass plays. How do you watch it? Do you just put it on and let it run?
Yeah, I just start from beginning to end and take some notes and let it run through. I mean, your way is probably better, to be honest. I should probably adopt a more focused approach, but I do like sometimes seeing it start to finish to kind of really see game flow and how things unfold and just kind of the chronological order to help frame it better for my mind.
Because here's the thing with me. I've watched the TV tape used generally at least 3 times, so I've memorized the game.
Okay, I watched less TV tape than you because I charted off of that the first time through, and then I watched the coach's tape. Usually is out by then.
I try to get myself, by the time David and I talk on Monday, where I have the game memorized from a play-by-play standpoint, and I can generally rattle off, and then to me, when I get to certain plays in the all 22, then I can queue up that play from what I've already know about it quickly by going that way. But to me, it just makes it easier to go back through the all 22 that way. Okay, why do I bring that up? Because last night I had my full session when it comes to the offensive line and the Steelers' offensive line. Boy, what a great performance that was, right? I mean, and I guess where I'm going with this is, and I was thinking this last night, how good is this offensive line? And you're not that old of a fella. Is this the best offensive line that you've seen in your life when it comes to the Steelers?
Well, I think collectively, these 5 guys have been the best. You could say, obviously last year might have been a little bit better because guys were a year younger, especially Foster, whatever the case is. 2 years ago, whatever year you want to choose. But yeah, it's a collective group. It's the best that I've seen, and it is a top 3, top 5 at worst offensive line that played maybe their best football against the Falcons, where they were able to they ran the ball for over 5 yards a carry. Ben got hit, I think, twice, not sacked once. That's basic numbers. That's a really good day. I thought David DeCastro had one of his best games ever as a Steeler. And there's a lot of good games for David DeCastro. I think Ramon Foster's rounding back into form after a bumpy first 2 weeks coming off that bone bruise suffered in training camp. Villanueva's been steady, hasn't been as inconsistent as he's been in the past. Gilbert's been excellent, and Pouncey. I thought actually Pouncey was probably the worst offensive lineman Sunday. Not that he was terrible, but he actually struggled more than what he usually does. But overall, I thought it was a great performance, and yeah, it's a great offensive line.
David Todd seems to underrate Alejandro Villanueva. Maybe I overrate him. Where are you? I think Villanueva's a top 10 left tackle, and maybe right at 10 or 11, but I think he's right there.
Yeah, I think I'm closer to you than maybe I am David Todd. I'd have to really study all the rest of left tackles. I mean, it's hard for me to rank some of those guys because
he's not awful. I mean, he's not bottom half of the league.
No,
right?
No. Yeah, I think he's probably somewhere in that 10 to 13 range. I think that's a fair assessment. I think he's having a really strong year. Again, I think he's been a little less up and down. I thought he got off to a much better start this year than he has in past years. And he's had some really tough matchups. I mean, Myles Garrett week 1, D Ford week 2.
Vic and Tack, and he did a great job against both those guys, I thought, this past week.
The Ravens pass rushers are always tough because they just have so many guys they throw at you. So, yeah, I think he's given up 1 sack this year, which is a good number for him.
He's going to get him a little bit of some Carl Lawson and some of that long arm. That's going to be a good matchup. Carl's been kind of quiet, though, this year, right? I mean...
Has he? I haven't even
boy, that guy can get after it, though. And that matchup, those smaller guys kind of scare me when it comes to Al because he doesn't do a great job of protecting that sternum of his at times.
Yeah.
And you get a guy that can get up underneath him. Myles Garrett did a good job a few times, and Myles is obviously not a small guy. But if Al leaves that breastplate of his open, that striking area, we've seen him be able to get driven back a few times. So that's definitely going to be one of the matchups to watch in this game. But I think Al has represented himself. People always want to go straight to the left tackle for some reason, and they instantly want to be a pass or fail. It seems like when it comes to that position, I thought he's played well. I thought generally overall, and I think you're right too about Marquise Pouncey. He might be the weakest link right now on that offensive line, and it hasn't been awful.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far. I thought he was the weakest link Sunday. I don't think he'd be the weakest link overall. You could still argue Foster for that, but regardless of who you want to call the weakest link on this offensive line is still a really strong chain. Which on some offensive lines like Seattle, the weakest link on Pittsburgh would be the best offensive lineman on someone else's team, and that's the biggest compliment you can probably pay to this group.
And that's where I was going with this conversation. Is a damn good top to bottom offensive line. I think even they can go one deep, especially if Finney's playing guard or something like that. I think they still might be in that conversation as well. All right, James Conner made himself a lot of yards after first contact. I mean that's not overly surprising, but it's because you go back to his college tape. But I think the thing we saw it more consistently, I think, against the Falcons.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job of creating. I thought the line got what was blocked, and then Conner did the rest, making guys miss in the second, third level. He's just a downhill guy. He's a powerful guy. You get him in space, you're not going to bring him down with an arm tackle or an ankle tackle. And I think he just runs everything tough and violent. He runs his routes hard. He runs the football hard. He's not going to be a patient guy in the way that Bell is in terms of how they dance. He's going to see the hole, hit the hole, and lower the shoulder. So I think that's fit into the offense well of being a kind of a quick-hitting run scheme. They run that power super well. I mean, they've always run it well, but it's been by far their best run scheme this year. I think 4 of the 5 or 5 of the 6 touchdowns that Conner has this year are off of power, and they ran that some other big runs against Atlanta. I think he fits that scheme really well.
They ran some nice pin and pull in that game.
Yep, they did.
And one of those times it resulted in a one-on-one situation, I think, with Conner needing to beat a defensive back that came across unblocked, and he did, And one other time, I think I'm trying to remember if it was a pin and pull situation, but it was the play that he leveled Trufant on. I mean, he punished him. you
Yeah.
know?
And then I got to give credit to McDonald and Jesse James. They did a great job run blocking Sunday. Super underrated, ran a lot of 12 personnel, but they sealed that edge really well.
A couple of those times on those block downs inside, they did do a great job on a couple of those pins. Is that what you call a couple of those on those pin and pulls?
What am I calling?
When DeCastro on the few times that we saw both DeCastro and Pouncey move to the right.
Yeah, if they're both pulling, you can call that a pin and pull, but also just on some of the straight power where it's just the Castro pull, and you got to get the down blocks on the front side to avoid penetration to seal that down. Then you get the kick out from the Castro, and you get Connor falling off the inside hip. So it depends, but yeah, they definitely ran some of those pin and pull with Pouncey and the Castro in space, the receiver cracking down or the tight end cracking down on the end.
All right, let's end this conversation by talking about how now we heard Ben go on the radio yesterday and say, look, when and if Le'Veon Bell gets back, he's going to push for James Conner to still be involved in the offense. We haven't gotten to this, but Ben talked. Ben has more excuses than a high school nurse. How much do you buy of that with the elbow?
I think it's a legit problem, and you can say that's an excuse, and maybe it is, but I think it's also probably the truth. A lot of these guys play hurt. Ben got hurt, and then he was asked to throw a record number of attempts off the elbow injury. I imagine that's going to bother you more than what you or I think. And so is that going to be an excuse for his poor play? No, you just got to deal with it. Everybody's got injury. But yeah, do I think that's affected some of his throws? Yeah, partially because I can't figure out another reason why he's had some of the throws he's had.
Why wait till halftime to have the talk with yourself? Why not have the talk before the game?
Well, that's the drama Ben coming into play.
Okay. So drama Ben hooked up with nurse, with nurse infirmary, high school nurse infirmary Ben.
He's got some good Halloween costumes this year. He can be nurse Ben. He can be drama Ben. Got it all lined up.
Yeah, just okay. I mean, I get it, and look, I can understand, and I have not studied. You can bet if I get a couple of hours here, maybe today or tomorrow, I'm going to go look at where he's got that elbow in the first half against the Falcons versus where he had it in the second half to see if I could tell a little bit of a difference there. But anyway, regardless, he talked about that, and he talked about Le'Veon Bell returning James Conner. Where are you at now with this whole? Let's assume Le'Veon keeps his word or supposed word and comes in during the bye week and has a couple of weeks to get ready. And what do you do with the two of those guys?
Well, obviously when Bell first comes in, it's going to be largely dependent on where he's at in physical shape and just kind of his overall, where his state.
And let's assume the best.
Right. Yeah, I was going to basically play, let's assume like 2 weeks from after Bell shows up, and let's assume that he's in, good enough shape. He's in normal Le'Veon Bell shape. He's still going to be the starter. He's still going to be not the guy, but sort of the guy. But I agree with Ben that there's a role for James Conner. It should not be the way it's been in the past where Bell's playing 90 to 95% of the time, and the backup, in this case Conner, is just getting a couple of table scraps. It should be a more even split. It's going to keep them both fresh, and they just deserve it. Obviously, Conner deserves to still have a fairly significant role in this offense moving forward. He should not be phased out. So I agree with Ben is that, is Bell going to be the starter and play the majority of the time? Yes. But should Conner have a role? Absolutely.
How much do you try to get both those guys on the field?
I think you can put some packages out there for it. They kind of teased it in training camp, where they've had two, multiple running backs on the field, and that was obviously lesser talent. It wasn't Bell and Conner. It was like Conner and Jalen Samuels, I think, in a lot of those cases. So, yeah, I think you and DT talked about it Monday. Have Conner in the backfield and Bell split out. Good luck stopping that. And you could even flip that because Conner's shown so much comfort as a receiver. Obviously, Bell's still the better receiver, but you could put Conner out wide and feel totally comfortable with it. So yeah, not a lot. I think you said maybe like 6 plays a game. I'd probably be in that 3 to 5 range. But yeah, add another wrinkle, add another element that defenses have to game plan for, where they're going to come out in their base defense and put linebackers on Le'Veon Bell, and good luck if you're a defense.
And that was me that suggested that, by the way.
Yes.
Not DT.
It was you. Did I say DT? I'm sorry. It was you.
I think you can be creative in situations like that. And like we just said there, it doesn't just have to be Bell that you move out into the slot. I mean, we've seen now enough out of James Conner that comfortable doing that as well. And imagine trying to match up with that with your big package.
Yeah. Good luck.
Good luck. Exactly. I mean, it gives you and you want to talk about being able to maybe open up a little bit more space for a guy like Antonio Brown in those situations. If anything, you're going to have a guy running, and boy, what a great, I don't know, like I said, I get distracted easily. What a great gif you put up from the all-22 on that throw that Ben missed on AB. When was that, first quarter?
Sometime in the first half, yeah.
If he gets that anywhere close to Antonio Brown, that might be a touchdown.
I mean, it's at least a 20-yard gain. And granted, there was some pressure. I know it's tough to see in the clip I posted. The catch throw allowed some pressure, and so it was a more difficult than usual throw from Ben. But that's still a throw you got to make.
All right, we're closing in on an hour and 10 minutes here. Where are you with James Washington right now?
It's just waiting. I thought there'd be more production. I don't think it's all his fault. They've taken a couple vertical shots with him, so hopefully you're hoping it connects. But yeah, I think the last part this offense needs, the last element for it to really be complete, is that consistent vertical threat that is not just Juju or Antonio Brown, and it's got to be James Washington. So you're looking for that big play from him, and Cincinnati would be a great time to start that.
You're not concerned about him. I mean, I'm not concerned about in his abilities and what I saw on college. I mean, it's just a matter of trying to get him fit in, finding a role for him in this offense. I mean, there's nothing that you're concerned about other than he only has 5 catches right now.
Yeah. No, you framed it really well Monday. I'm with you 100%. I'm not concerned about where Washington's at. I'm not, thinking about, was that a bad pick? It's just I am surprised by the lack of production.
I am too, and boy, what a great time it would be to get him going on a deep ball or two against Cincinnati. Because I'm with you. There are right and wrong ways to get Ryan Switzer involved in the offense. And in my opinion, against the Ravens, how he was used was the wrong way. I mean,
he did not like how I framed it either.
He did not. I mean, I understand you framed it right.
Yeah.
It's just you don't want to see that on a game-by-game basis. Really, I mean, you don't want to have to see it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I know. He got mad I compared him to Le'Veon Bell, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. But I'm not gonna get down that rabbit hole.
Right. I mean, I did not take the way you framed it in that post as a slight against him. No. Look, he is what he is. He is a 4-yard wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a positive article. They were just using him in a similar way to Le'Veon Bell, out of the backfield and alignments and motions, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He's just not, he's not Wes Welker just because he's a short white guy.
Right. I mean, he is a guy that if you need 4 yards, though, you can get him free on an out route and get 4 yards.
He's played well. I'm happy that he's a Steeler. He's been a great addition to the return team.
I'm ecstatic they have him. But I just don't like how they used him against the Ravens, quite honestly. I mean, plain and simple. And there's been other times where I thought, get him out of the damn backfield, kind of situation there. But I mean, this offense is close, right? I mean, right?
Yeah. No, it's close. It's gotta be more consistent. How about real quick? I know we want to wrap up the show, but how about that red zone offense? I didn't realize how good it was. Second in the league. That hasn't happened ever.
Right, second in the league. And Randy Fichtner talked about that not long after and it wasn't a huge thing that nobody knew about here. The red zone offense had to get better. Randy talked about that not long after he was took over for Todd Haley and all like that they had to do a better job of getting once they get in the red zone. And look, make no mistake about it, that number would be higher if not for one Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, for that lane duck throw.
How many red zone interceptions does he have? 2, right? Or no?
What's the other one? I know Sunday. I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on the other.
I'm drawing a blank on it as well too. But I mean, look, at least that one. I mean, that we saw, he forced that one up to AB the other day. Seemed like I'm trying to remember another one in there, but regardless. And Juju not catching that one ball in the end zone.
Yep.
A couple of games ago against the Ravens, that ended up being a failed, didn't it? Didn't that end up being a failed red zone trip? Didn't they they settled for a field goal on that one, I think. But they are close, and Randy's done a great job. And I thought I diagrammed or I laid this out based off what Ben said on the radio on Tuesday, talking about how he changed that. What did you think about the subtle change in the route by AB on that from 2 plays earlier to the touchdown, the first touchdown to AB in that game against the Falcons.
No, it was great, and you had the great GIF showing that side by side to really kind of to hammer the point home, and that just shows why Ben and AB are Ben and AB, two guys that can make that adjustment on the fly and then just complete that play, because that is not an easy throw or catch or route or anything, and they made it look simple.
Right, and I think it does show, and that's one of the things I try to get across in that post, was the fact that it just goes to show you how quickly in-game adjustments can be made. And not only that, I mean, 2 plays after something like that happened, hopefully him saying "burr," hopefully that first, hopefully their communication is just not that simple. And who knows, maybe it is. I mean, you've pointed out in the past, sometimes it's a simple double tug on the old face mask by Ben that switches from one route to another. So maybe it is that simple at times, and maybe it does need to be that simple with a guy like AB. I don't know, but all right. Anything else to add heading into the weekend here, game against the Bengals?
Well, just 2 quick overall thoughts. One, I know just off topic, but that Hurricane Michael is hitting Florida, so stay safe if there are Floridians and anyone in the Georgia, southern Georgia area too. Make sure you stay safe and follow the things you have to follow, because it's a really dangerous storm that's moving in. Second thought, on a more lighthearted note, Danny Smith forever. Can we get that started? Danny Smith forever. He might be the best coordinator on the Steelers staff right now. I'm being honest when I say that.
But he can diagram a punt block.
Yeah, but Rosie Nix is a heck of a player. I love Rosie Nix.
Him and look, people keep thinking I'm down on Tyler Matakevich this and down on maybe at times Anthony Chickalo that, but those 3 guys and really DHB as well. And we saw some good things out of Brian Allen this week and Jordan Dangerfield, I thought, on special teams. This might be the best special teams unit the Steelers have had. If they can only get their kicker and their punter to be more consistent, we could really be cooking with gas here. But I mean, I've said it, beginning of the year, Rosie Nix could probably have 12 punt blocks this year. I mean, he's that close. Probably the same thing can be said about Dirty Red Tyler Matakevich as well too.
This team could legitimately have 3 pump blocks this year. DHB got robbed of one because he got held. Matakevich stumbled, and that stopped him against KC, and then they got one against Atlanta. I mean, that's absurd.
Write this down, too. Artie Burns is going to block a kick.
He's been close. He actually, the one he got called for offsides, if he doesn't jump offsides and times it right, he probably blocks that. He actually overran it Sunday. I don't know if you saw that.
That happened after he just missed that one. The whole Danny Smith bubblegum chewing gif happened, I think, after that penalty there. Yep. And I think Danny's thinking to himself, that's where that's kind of that smile and him looking up at the scoreboard, the replay on that. I think he's thinking to himself right there, Artie's going to get him one.
Yeah, and I give Burns credit. He goes all out on those.
He really does. And mark my words, he's going to get him 1 or 2 very soon. Talking about blocked place kicks there. And about look, I'm from the deep south. I know about those hurricanes. Like I told that old boy last night on Twitter. I hate to be blunt about it. The old boy in Panama City, I think, reads Steelers Depot and perhaps listens to the podcast. If you're on the coast and that thing hits and you stay, do the authorities a favor and take a black magic marker and write your Social Security number on your body. I hate to end on such a note, but I've been there and I've kind of had to read about and experience about that stuff, firsthand there on the Gulf Coast during Ivan there. So I hate to end on that note, but hopefully if that saves somebody's life, then so be it. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow my co-host David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. Follow Alex Kozora on the Twitter machine at Alex_Kozora. Alex won't be as rude to you as I am on Twitter. So there's that. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. We also have an ad-free version. Alex, that's gone over like gang fire or wildfire.
The gangbusters, I think is what you're looking for.
Gangbuster Wildfire. For $25, you go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that ad-free. Sign up for $25 to get a year calendar version of an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. You win, we win, everybody wins. And in the meantime, David Todd should be back with me on Friday. We'll have a Cincinnati Bengals beat writer on to further discuss the game against the Bengals coming up on Sunday in Cincinnati. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. And today, Alex Kozora.